Hey, everybody, this is Kenny. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. I got the great opportunity to talk to transformational leadership coach Walt Morgan, and Walt's story is so amazing from so many years of serving our country to now serving and training and teaching and mentoring leaders all over the place. Listen in as Walt talks about how you personally can transform yourself, what is integral coaching, and what is the difference between mentoring, coaching, therapy. You don't want to miss a second of this, leaders. Let's get at it.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. I have got a terrific leader with me today, and I can't wait to pull so much advice out of him. The work that he's doing, from what I can see and from what I've read and saw and heard on podcasts and stuff like, is spectacular. So I can't wait to get some great advice from him. So I want to introduce transformational leadership coach Walt Morgan to the podcast today. Walt, it is great to have you here. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, Kenny, thank you so much. I feel so welcome, and thank you for that kind introduction. And I am doing well, and I want to thank you, not just for having me here today. I want to thank you for the service that you offer. I really, truly believe, from a leadership perspective, you are investing in a critical place. Leading from the middle is such a beautiful service that you offer, and I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate those words. I want to jump in with your backstory because your career has been amazing. Something to do with an obsession as a kid with helicopters, I think. So tell us your backstory and what led to all those years serving, and thank you for your service, serving our country the way you have, and then what led to you then moving your career into what you're doing now.
So you're looking for a brief professional bio from when I was 5 until now. I can
Yeah.
do that, Kenny. We can do
Doesn't
this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to
So,
be brief. Yeah.
well, when I was 5, as you referenced, I was in kindergarten, and the task was to draw a picture and write a few words, as much as we can in kindergarten, um, about what we wanted to do when we grew up, or what we wanted to be. And I drew a picture of a helicopter and wrote, I want to be a helicopter pilot. And that picture still hangs in my childhood room on a ranch in rural Oregon.
Awesome.
And so when I graduated from high school, I went off to university on a Navy ROTC scholarship. And when I graduated from the University of Colorado in Boulder, I went to flight school and became a helicopter pilot. And even during this kind of weird time, it's like an F-18 jet draft. Everybody was going. Everybody who did sufficiently well in flight school is going that way. And I did pretty well in flight school. And I actually had to fight a little bit for that helicopter spot because I was supposed to go jets. I remember having a conversation around that.
Mm.
Um, because I was just really, I feel grounded to that picture that I drew when I was 5. And then, of course, that was the right choice for me. And um, I really enjoyed my service. When people thank me for my service, it's a little bit uncomfortable because not everybody sacrifices equally. And I'm, you know, deeply humbled by the sacrifice that so many service members make that feels so much greater than my own. I really enjoyed flying helicopters. This is what I was supposed to be doing. I loved it. And I was in the Navy for 23 years and then retired at the rank of commander.
Mm.
And the last 40 years in the Navy I was here back at my alma mater, University of Colorado. I was the um, commander at the Naval ROTC unit, the executive officer, and I was teaching leadership classes as part of that role. Officially designated as an associate professor, and I thought I'd had leadership figured out before then, right? I had been designated to be in charge of teams in a variety of combat zones, which is quite different than I would say, being in combat. I don't want to misrepresent that. Um, and uh, and you typically found success, right? Had some hard
Mm-hmm.
moments too,
Mm-hmm.
but as a designated leader in the military, I felt that I had done well and achieved some great things, and was part of some amazing teams that I contributed to. So I'm like, okay, I've got this leadership thing pretty much figured out. And then during that 4 years of teaching that subject matter, it became a really kind of reflective time for me as I look back on my military. And then I found myself wanting in many ways. I felt myself like maybe I had shown up insufficiently as a leader. And I also found places where I'd shown up, I think, really well. And I was able to honor that and learn and grow. But after 4 years of teaching leadership, I was just hooked by the subject, fascinated. I had grown so much in my perspective and my understanding of leadership and my identity as a leader during that time. And I was so honored to be a part of others' leadership journeys during that time also. That felt really important to me. So when I retired as a crossroads, so many of my squadron mates from the Navy are flying in the airlines now, or maybe they're doing some defense consulting. Like there's this career path for the retired military officer
Mm-hmm.
that they'll kind of just the career will embrace you and say, "Hey, we know who you are, and we have a place for you, and we'll pay you for that."
Mm-hmm.
But I felt this calling. I would describe it. I do describe it as a nudge from the universe. There
Mm-hmm.
was something about this leadership development thing that felt important. So I branded myself as a leadership development specialist and waited for all of the offers to come rolling through. They did not. And eventually, a Fortune 200 healthcare company did take a chance on me. And I was working in what they called their wisdom department, which was their leadership, the leadership side of the house and the cultural side of the house. And it was a very heart-centric space. It was very emotionally forward. And it was during that time that I learned that I'd been completely negligent around my emotional development, my spiritual development for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so if my time teaching leadership classes at the University of Colorado had been kind of a steep awareness and cognitive period of growth,
Mm-hmm.
this became a very, very steep and sometimes painful emotional and spiritual period of growth. But it was so critical for my development, for my wholeness, for my energy, for my ability to serve, for my ability to have compassion and empathy and purpose and drive. Like everything became everything merged and became so much more powerful in how I lived my life with impact. And it was also during that time that that company sent me to coaching school up in Canada. I went to Integral Coaching Canada um, for several iterations of their coaching training. So I trained there for a few years, but I knew like as soon as I started that work, I knew that that's, a few years before, that's what that nudge from the universe had been. This is what I was supposed to be doing. This is what I was called to do. I was called to serve others in their individual journeys around leadership capacity, personal growth, um, to help them create the change and the impact
Mm.
that they viewed. So
Wow.
that brings us up to speed, Kenny. I think we're here.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing, amazing journey. I think I love that you're able to fulfill a dream that you drew at 5 years old. I mean, you said it so nonchalantly, but I think that is incredible. And I haven't heard of that happening often to people. So kudos for that. I want to ask this before we jump into the leadership stuff though, because it struck me, Walt, that you said that there was a lot you started to really find out about yourself. And I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I was almost thinking that there was a lack of self-care, through your time serving.
Hmm.
Was that because, or is that accurate first? And then if it is it because you were just so busy serving others?
Yeah, so I wasn't too busy serving others. The issue is I was too busy serving myself, right?
Okay.
We call it
Gotcha.
military service. Um, I performed my function. I performed it well. I sacrificed in some ways to do that. So in that regard, I met expectations.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
Hmm.
the world was my playground.
Hmm.
Flying helicopters was really, really fun for me. Like I couldn't get enough of it. And so really, I was guided by a belief system at that phase of my life. And that
Hmm.
belief system was very much if I collect enough experiences, then I will feel complete.
Wow.
And so I was really just expanding outwards, just frantically to have this adventure and to create this story and to go just live this exciting thing. And then also part of that was just sharing it with others. So like create this story and share the story or drag somebody into my story and we go have an adventure. And through all of that, I didn't feel more complete. I had a pretty
Wow.
good set of stories, but
Yeah.
that thing that I was desperately chasing and seeking during that phase of my life um, didn't achieve what I believed it would or hoped it would. And keep in mind, this belief system was like buried deep within me. It's not something I
Yeah.
was aware of. That didn't become illuminated until I had a coach, right? That's the work that we did in one of my first coaching programs as a client. So, um, and it was serving me at that phase of my life. And this is something I'd share with your audience. Like this belief system that is working so well for you and making you successful right now in the middle, be open that it might start limiting you soon,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And that's a conversation we can have here maybe later
Yeah.
if that's how this conversation flows.
Yeah.
Um, so what I had to discover was how to feel complete
Gotcha. Okay.
by looking inward instead of outward.
Wow. Wow. A lot of great lessons in there. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Um, let's jump into coaching because I want to make sure we tap into this expertise here. Um, you talk about how coaching and leading are interconnected. Talk a little bit about that, Walt. How are they interconnected?
Yeah, it is difficult to discover our best, most impactful selves on our own. Even if we know that thing that's getting in our way, even if we know that we come across too aggressively in our communication, or even if we know that we give so much of ourselves that we struggle to create boundaries, even if we know that like our desire to earn more money is creating pain and hardship in other areas, even if we know that and we can name it,
Hmm.
it's very, very difficult to overcome that by ourselves in a timely manner.
Hmm.
So, in that regard, I would say that coaching and leadership are intertwined because we benefit from help on that journey,
Wow.
right? Just
Absolutely.
to be able to have a professional be able to say, look, I feel like this thing is getting in my way. And I keep doing it. It's like a New Year's resolution, right?
Yeah.
It's like they never work because there's a belief system that underlies our behaviors. And we tend to focus on without a coach, we tend to just focus on the behaviors like, oh, why do I keep doing that? Why do I keep doing that? And never actually really get beneath the behaviors to the beliefs, which is where real change is made. And
Mhm.
then the other part of that is whatever that thing is whatever that thing is that it is making us feel stuck or bothering us or getting, we all know what our thing is, right? We
Mhm.
all know
Mhm.
what it is, I think. Like in an hour and a half conversation, um, my clients can crisply name this is what I want to accomplish in this coaching program. This is just one thing to better be able to um, connect with my own voice and express it confidently,
Mhm.
or to better listen and embrace the opinions of others before making my decisions, or to not get tripped up by feedback, whatever it is, right? They know after an hour and a half conversation, they usually have a sense of it going into that conversation.
Mhm.
What is that one thing that would allow me to show up better every day, everywhere? If I could just do this, I wouldn't keep getting tripped up. Well, that is a leadership topic, right? Leadership isn't isn't being a better public speaker.
Right.
Leadership isn't knowing management techniques around motivation. Leadership is really about making our best impact.
Mhm.
What is the thing that's getting in our way of the impact? What's that thing that keeps tripping us up?
Mhm.
It's probably not going to be found on a spreadsheet,
Yeah,
right? It's going to be
absolutely.
found in our bodies, in our hearts, in our behaviors, in our beliefs, how we check for success, right? That's where the coaching lies, but that's where the leadership lies also. It's all in the exact same spot.
All right there. And I love that you have that as in your title, so to speak, transformational leadership coach. And you really tied that in perfectly. I wanted to stick on the word transformational for a few seconds. And we've heard so much of, it's kind of been a buzzword over the last 10 years, right? Transformational or transactional, right?
Right.
Transformational leader, tell us what are some of the huge benefits of being transformational, and are there benefits for being transactional?
Yes. That's a lot, and that's such a thoughtful question. First off, we might be using transformational um, in two ways, but we're using them similarly. So, first off, let's talk about transformational coaching. When I talk about transformational coaching, I'm talking about transforming from one way of being to a new way of being. And
Mm,
when I say a way of being, I'm referring to really three components of a thing. The first is a belief system. The second are the behaviors that that belief system creates. And the third is how we check for success. So let's take the example I gave about myself earlier. The belief system, one of thousands of belief systems that I carry. It just happened to be one that was both serving me and then starting to limit me more and more and more.
yeah.
So the belief system, one, was if I collect enough experiences, then I will feel complete. The behaviors were this always kind of ignoring the present and setting out on these kind of adventures that were fun, but weren't always allowing me to engage with the details of my life in the present.
Mm,
And then the third thing was, what was I checking for? Well, I was checking to see if I felt complete. Do I feel complete? I don't feel complete. Well, I guess I'd better, you know, in the worst case scenario, get drunk and get in a fight. But in, better scenarios, buy a ticket to see the world. Who knew how that was going to manifest? But you kind of get the energy behind it, always
yeah.
expanding outward. So that's the current way of being. A
Mm,
new way of being was was a belief system, and there were metaphors to support that, and we don't have really time to get into that.
mhm,
But a new way of being in which I would if I served others from my heart, then I would feel complete,
Mm,
right?
mm,
It's just the same
yeah.
outcome,
Yeah.
but a more effective way of getting there.
Yeah.
And then the behaviors that emerge from that are really about service. Like military service, yes, I served, but not deeply and truly served another human being with humility and true sacrifice, right? So that's that, and then how do I check, do I feel complete in my service, or you know do I have body sensations that suggest contentedness in the moment? How am I
Mm,
checking? Am I here right now? Right. Um, so that is an example of a transformation in a way of being. Um, and then when we talk about transformational leadership, what we're talking about is a way of engaging as a leader, as a human being, that both elevates the humans on your team, right? To really invest in them in a way as a compassionate, concerned human. So you're engaged, you're serving as a leader, which is slightly different than servant leadership, but not too different. And also allowing them to help transform you through that experience. So that means that being on a team
there you go.
becomes iterative. I'm helping others transform while they help me transform,
Yeah.
which is also an important leadership concept.
Absolutely. And I love how you really outlined the distinct differences there and how that's in both ways for you. That's fantastic. Um you've kind of already outlined how you personally transformed. Has there been anything else that's been a revelation for you as you've now gone deeper and served more and more clients? Was there anything else that's transformed within your leadership style of late?
Oh, so I would say there's an important awareness that is surfaced. Um, when we're in the middle, we tend to be focused on really practical things, and
Mm,
that's okay,
yeah.
right? we
Yeah.
we want a promotion, we want to earn more money, we want to create status for ourselves, and we just want to get stuff done, right? It's a place of doing, and that's developmentally appropriate, right? In the middle, David Brooks talks about the second mountain, which is like we kind of emerge from that place when we recognize that we have enough, you know, not everybody emerges from that place, but a lot of people will emerge from that place. Say,
Mhm.
okay, I have enough. Now what?
Mm,
And my awareness is that if we invest in that thing that's been getting in our way sooner, then we can emerge from that more powerfully to
mm,
make an impact that isn't about status and income and promotion.
mhm.
Like many of us will hit our late 40s, early 50s and want to serve differently.
Yes. Yeah.
And we can push through the middle more powerfully when we're invested in our own growth sooner. I kind of think of it or describe it as investing,
Mhm,
right? If you start investing when you're 30, right, your return on the investment will be far, far higher than it is if you start investing when you're 50,
mhm,
right? These are basic principles. So I think of leadership coaching sooner as just shifting the angle of the trajectory, and then longitudinally over time, that capacity, I'm thinking of impact, right? That impact over time is greatly heightened. It's greatly heightened. So, yes, I care deeply about the individual, but what I really care about is our species and our
mhm.
planet. And sorry to get all woo woo on you here, but really, when we all elevate our leadership, then we're going to maybe spend a little less time quabbling about who's the Speaker of the House at the moment, and maybe spend more time talking about really what AI means to our society and to our economy and to our humanity, and start planning that out, because that thing's gonna, wallop us here pretty soon, and I feel pretty unprepared for that. So
Yeah,
that's a leadership issue.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that's kind of the awareness, is invest early. And I have another anecdote about that I can share in a moment.
Sure. Yeah.
And before that, you asked the question about transactional. It's occurring to me, and transformational. There is a place for transaction, of course,
Yeah.
right? As you kind of
Yes.
separate these ideas
Yeah.
of leadership and management, they're both important,
Yeah.
right? We have to be able to
Yeah.
get things
Absolutely.
done effectively. So great leaders are also great managers. They
Yeah.
have great vision, they're transformational, and they also have some strong management skill sets to organize and to get things done. So I celebrate both the transformation and the transaction. I just tend to spend more space in the transformational arena.
Yeah. I love it. You're dead on. You're spot on. Share that anecdote that you were going to share.
Yeah, so this beautiful thing that I've observed. So I established a coaching program at the University of Colorado. I serve there on the executive committee for the Center for Leadership, so that it allows me to be able to create these initiatives. And I read the book Leadership Reckoning, which is about Rice University's leadership programs in their Doer Institute. And one of the things that Rice learned through rigorous research is the thing that can make the most difference in a university student's leadership development, a measurable difference, is leadership coaching. Like,
Mm,
okay, let's see if we can get a program together here. And we have 17 of these just wonderful coaches who do this coaching for the university for essentially peanuts. And we'll coach 60 students this year. I coach a couple of students myself, and this is what I have learned. Their minds at that age are so open, and they live in this world of possibility, and they're so flexible in how they develop. Their trajectory is still unestablished. They learn so quickly. They get like, I'll be in like 20 minutes into a session, and they have connected so many dots and done so much work. I'm like, man, in 20 minutes we've just accomplished what it takes my 55-year-old executive an hour and a half to get done, right? They're so agile, they're so open. So if there's an invitation to your audience today, it's, while you're still in the middle, before you're fully encumbered by your executive life, before this is how things are supposed to be done and the weight of it all collapses upon you, while you're still open, flexible, capable, and invest in the coaching now, right? And hopefully your company will invest in it for you. And if not, would you rather spend $8,000 for coaching or for a new car? Most people will say a new car, but really, if you can imagine the impact that coaching will make in your life, that transformation, now is the time to do that, because it will not only set you up and give you choices in your future, it'll create that greater impact in your work and your relationships and your fulfillment, and really allow you to serve in a greater way. But now, just like investing financially, now is the time to
now's the
invest
time.
in your
Yeah.
leadership. So that's my passionate plea, based on just this incredible thing that I've witnessed with our students at the university, and just how agile they are at this phase of their life.
Yeah, I love that. And both those pieces of advice are great, right? And also, how you said you're in the middle right now, but you aspire maybe to go to the C-suite or whatever, right? And then it gets real, right? If you're not prepared, you'll find
Yeah.
yourself back. And I love that. This has been amazing. I've got two other quick questions, and I want to make sure people know how to connect with you. Um, I hadn't heard this before, and I want to make sure I pronounce it right. I think you pronounced it at the beginning. Integral
Yes.
coaching. What is that?
Okay, so integral coaching is based on, so Ken Wilber was like this kind of brilliant but out there philosopher scientist through the 70s, 80s, 90s, created this thing called integral theory that was going to save the world and the planet. And honestly, if we'd allowed it to, it probably would have. It's this brilliant way of categorizing all knowledge. It's inclusive. It's it's just reading the books is a little dense, but every once in a while, run in, a quarter of the time people say integral coaching, is that related to integral theory? And I'll say, yeah, no, it's connected. And they get so excited, they're like, oh, I love Ken Wilber. So some people are into it. Some people have never heard of it. I hadn't heard of it before I started doing it. It's just a really beautiful way of guiding transformation. I'll just
Mhm.
leave it at that. And I'll
Okay.
say, as I work with other coaches, a lot of the times it just kind of feels like they're, take this assessment and throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what surfaces, and they're looking for their way in. I would say with integral coaching, I always feel that the client is exactly where they're supposed to be. I feel like we're where we're supposed to be. I always feel confident in the path that is emerging before us. And I feel like for me, integral coaching has been undefeated. Like every
Wow.
time I feel that there is a profound transformation. And when I coach clients who pay out of their pocket, if they don't feel transformed, I just give them their money back, which has never
Mhm.
happened, but I would gladly do that, right? Like if you don't feel transformed, if you don't feel so much more capable in a way that's important to you, then yeah, I don't want your money,
Yeah.
right? And it's integral coaching that kind of gives me that confidence in making that offer.
Yeah.
It's a way of approaching transformation.
That's awesome. You got me curious now. I'm gonna have to look up more of what that is now. And I've heard of Kim Wilber, but he's been way over my head, I gotta tell you. So
Mine too. Mine too. We're together on that, Kenny.
um here's my last regular question, Walt. This has been amazing. Um you mentioned agile as one. What would be another must-have skill for up and coming
Mm,
leaders today, in your opinion?
yeah. I think probably the most critical skill for any leader is the willingness and ability to create space to be, right? We are bombarded. Um, and and we're addicted to our mobile devices,
Mhm.
and I'm saying we collectively, based on the observations, we don't carve out the space to be alone with our thoughts. We seem to be terrified of being bored. And I think the most critical thing a leader can do is to willingly be alone with their thoughts, to seek out their own truth. And from that space, they can move readily into action on the right things instead of just constantly responding to somebody else's priorities and ideas.
Mhm.
So that's number one, creating space and being able to be in that space in the
Yeah.
quiet.
Yeah, I love that. There's such power in reflection, right? And daily reflection, and being
Hmm.
able to, recap your day and say, man, what could I have done better? What, where
Hmm.
did I fall short at? Or what were my wins today? I think that is so important. And you nailed it, right? We're so afraid that we're going to miss something if we put our devices down,
Yes.
for a half hour. I love that. Walt, this has been so amazing. How can people connect with you?
You can find me on there's a contact button on my website, which is tliftcoaching .com. So the letter T, Lift coaching.com. You can find me there and contact. And I would love to have a conversation around leadership with any member of your audience. I I do leadership all day. I teach a leadership class at the university. I coach leadership all day. It's just what I love, and I love learning from others about leadership too. So I'd be so curious to step into that dialogue and learn from you and just share that dialogue and the conversation.
That's awesome. So I'm hoping that people take you up on that. I'm hoping and praying that that's the case. They can learn a lot by having that conversation with you. Thank you so much for all you've given us today and for being so generous with your time, and being so transparent about your background. It's amazing. And my final word for you is please keep doing what you're doing. It is such important work. And I'll just add this because it got past me when you were saying this. You have a bigger perspective on leadership when you started talking about the Speaker of the House and the things that are going on in the world. When you talk about the species, folks, he really means it. He talks about this. If you just go look him up, you have a much broader and bigger perspective on why great leadership is so important today. So thank you for that, and continue to do it, please.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for everything you do and for our conversation today. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Folks, we're going to leave it there. This has been Kenny and Walt and the Leading from the Middle podcast. We'll talk to you real soon.